from the suffragettes fighting for the vote to the tens of thousands who marched on Washington to protest Trump's inauguration, there's been a major concern for many in fights for gender equality that the movement has largely been dominated by white women. After the 2017 march, organizers took heat for excluding women of color, not including issues of racial equity in the larger conversation about social change. My next guest is hoping to reshape that conversation one community at a time. Greater Boston regular and Babson professor of management, Tina Opie, is the founder of Shared Sisterhood. Good to see you, Tina. She is joined by Michaela Hava. Hello, Michaela. Nice to meet you. Lindsey Vizvary Galvao. Did I get it?
Yes.
Close enough, who's been participating in the project. Great to meet you, too. Tina, what does Shared Sisterhood mean? What does that mean?
Shared Sisterhood is about how we can have women who are different, so black and white women, for example, working together to make collective advance towards equity.
And I described it, but they aren't your words around. What's the problem you're attacking, and what's the goal? Let's work backwards. What do you hope to achieve through this process?
So what we hope to achieve is workplace equity. So when we talk about things, for example, like the pay gap in the workplace, we're hoping that as women, we can work together to finally close that gap. That's one example of some of the things that we're working towards. We're also trying to have just authentic conversation in our communities and in organizations so that we can really wrestle with the topic of, for example, racism and feminism and work together to actually make this place better.
Why'd you want to be part of this thing, Michaela?
Because personally I knew I had a lot of growth in that area. I had recognized through my friendship with Tina and through conversations that we had had that I had sort of viewed myself as being separate from the problem. I felt like since I wasn't racist, that was enough. And through conversation, I realized that, okay, sure, that's great, but what can you be doing more? And looking at how I'm raising my family and how I'm just participating in society in general and what I can do.
Boy, that's pretty self-aware. Why are you involved in this thing?
Some for similar reasons, but it's been a long journey for me, probably since my early 20s, when I realized in graduate school that there was so much that I didn't know. Studying history, when I finally realized how intersectional history is.
You teach U.S. history.
I do teach U.S. history as well. That's kind of when my journey began. And I think to me, too, as someone who always stood behind social justice, I realized more so I needed to practice what I preached. And I wanted to grow. I wanted to build relationships. I wanted to understand my community better. And yes, 2016 was a huge turning point for my life.
Yeah, but you know, Tina, having met these two women in the last 2 minutes, these are exactly the people who need the least amount of work, it seems to me. I mean, the people who are apparently pretty self-aware and who want to be in this, they're sort of in the category of people who have least to worry about, who are most open to that sort of inclusive. Am I not right about that?
You're right. So Dolly Chugg, one of my academic colleagues, would say that all of us are good-ish, right? So I would say that Michaela and Lindsey are exactly the target audience of something like Shared Sisterhood, because what they're sharing with you is that they're not necessarily engaging in racist behavior, but they want to do better. Because remember, you actually have to be an anti-racist. You can't just be neutral towards racism.
But wait a second, let's assume there was a woman. I'd be worried more about the woman who doesn't want to do better. How do you capture her in this dialogue?
Maybe I don't, because I'll be honest with you. There's going to be 20% of the population who never wants to come around. I can waste all my time and energy on her, or I can focus on two women here who want to help.
Speaking of focus, I'm not quite sure I understand exactly how this works, not being part of Shared Sisterhood yet, actually. So could you do like 60 or 90 seconds of what a session might be? Is that okay?
Right. Okay, so
take it away.
We'll just go right. So Lindsey and Michaela, I was on Facebook the other day in our mom's group. And you saw the text I sent you, Lindsey, where there was a white woman and she was defensive. Can you help me out with that? How would we address that? Because this actually happened, Jim. This is not hypothetical. This actually happened. So what happened next?
Yes, so there was a woman who had engaged in some behavior that was racist on Facebook. And not to get into the nitty-gritty, but the first thing I did was I read the exchange, and I jumped in with my perspective as a white woman to say, I understand these dialogues are uncomfortable. I understand that there's a lot to untangle here. It is okay to feel uncomfortable. Facebook isn't the best environment to do that, but we're doing this in order to grow our community and keep our children safe. And I said, my discomfort as a white mother does not compare to a black mother who is fearful for her children's safety. And, you know, to counter your point, even if I am an ally or an accomplice to Tina, I still have a lot of personal growth to do in order to really understand and disentangle systemic racism. Just because I want to be an ally doesn't mean I always accomplish my goals.
So,
and
Lindsey, I'm going to be a shared sister now. I'm going to
Yes.
interrupt you because we have like 45 seconds left. And
Done.
So this is an example of support. And the important thing to realize is that I asked for the support, and then Lindsey came and helped. Another example with Michaela was sort of challenging Michaela. I don't know if you remember the conversation we had at the bus stop where you were saying, should I talk to my kids about racism? Do you want to just take it from there?
Yeah, because there had been an issue of racism that either somebody in our neighborhood had experienced, and I was speaking with you about it. I said, well, I don't teach my kids about that kind of language, and I don't want them to know that kind of language. And she said, well, I can't protect my kids from that kind of language. They have to know what that means. And by protecting your white kids from it, what help is that, right?
Yes.
So then I had to take that back and sit with that a little bit and think about how I could switch that dialogue in my own house.
Is the goal in this thing just to make workplaces more inclusive? I mean, why wouldn't this apply to a classroom or to the world at large? I mean, is that the goal? You start in a workplace and then you broaden, you step back? Is that what it is?
That is exactly it. So we sort of beta tested this in our neighborhood, but the goal is to think about how teachers like Lindsey and Michaela and like me can use this to infuse the curriculum, how we can talk to our colleagues differently, how organizations can actually get into these authentic conversations to dismantle these systems of oppression.
You have 30 seconds. Could you do this with your kids? Could they, I don't mean your personal kids, I mean the kids you teach.
Yeah,
could they
I
deal
think
with
so.
this?
And I'm at a very young age.
How young
where
is
I
young?
took kindergarten.
Could they deal with this?
Yeah.
Because they don't have a lot of the prejudices yet. Do they, or do
They
they?
do, and I don't think they necessarily know that they do, right? It's systemic, that it's something that they come and carry in, this white privilege, because they've just had it.
And you teach U.S. history, I assume older kids, yes?
I do. I
How
have
old?
11th graders.
Could they deal with this?
Yes, and we deal with it almost daily in the classroom. So
In this sort of way?
Well, in terms of both disentangling the historical content and having more difficult conversations and giving them really challenging questions to get them to kind of rethink and reconsider their viewpoints, especially on American history, which I think has been told completely from a white narrative. So yes, every single day we're tackling these issues.
Very exciting. The world could use you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you, Lindsey.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Jim.
Michaela, thanks for your time.
Thank
and
you.
Tina, as always.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jim.
it.